It's time now for the Life and Times of History's Greatest Horror Movies Slashers Abridged Survival Guide with Ali and Jay.
Today's subject, Man-Thing. No, not Swamp Thing, Man-Thing.
What's that?
The sound of everyone Googling whether or not this movie is an actual thing. We've covered a lot of horror movies, but this will be our first time covering a comic book horror movie, let alone a Marvel movie. F*** you.
And yes, this really did happen, I swear. In 2005, the Sci-Fi Channel whipped out Man-Thing, directed by Brett Leonard. And yeah, Sci-Fi Channel. Like Sharktopus Sci-Fi. Like Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys Sci-Fi. Really foreshadows the amount of quality to expect here. Before we get into the movie, we should quickly go through the story of the comics Man-Thing. In the comics, Ted Sallis was a scientist in the Florida Everglades trying to recreate the super soldier serum that made Captain America, and a bunch of sciencey gobbledygook happens and he becomes the powerful Man-Thing.
No relation.
Man-Thing can burn whatever touches him and feed off their fear. He's also the guardian of the Nexus of Realities, an interdimensional gateway through which enemies and allies pass, including Howard the Duck.
So, how much of that do you think sci-fi actually adapted?
In the Marvel televised cinematic universe, Ted Sallis was an elderly Native American tribal chief living in the swampy town of Bywater. Ted's unnamed tribe, which seems to only consist of 3 people, was in dire financial straits until a greedy tycoon named Frederick Schist offered to buy up their land for oil.
F Schist. Get it? It sounds like fascist. And call me f***ing crazy, but if you look really closely, you might notice his company logo kinda sorta looks like a Nazi emblem.
Symbolism.
One native, Renee, accepts the offer. Ted refuses, so kills him and buries the body beneath an oil well in the middle of a swamp, specifically in a sacred area known as the Dark Water.
Little did Schist realize that within the Dark Water dwells a powerful guardian spirit that protects the Nexus of Realities, who resurrects Ted Sallis as the Man-Thing. Or possesses him? Or his skeleton? I don't know. So they've totally flushed the comic's origin story down the toilet and replaced it with the tired old Native American curse cliche. Does he do anything comic booky? Nope. The Nexus is name-dropped exactly once, and never elaborated on or acknowledged beyond that, so that's pretty much worthless. The whole thing about feeding off fear isn't established, and if anything, one of the kills flat-out contradicts this, so that's useless. So instead, Man-Thing is a bloodthirsty slasher who indiscriminately slaughters anyone who enters the swamplands. I get the impression that he can't actually leave the swamp, so instead of going after oil workers, which would make sense, he goes after random innocents who happen to be in the area. It's honestly really confusing. They say that for all the blood spilled, he seeks blood, but, I mean, Man-Thing's the only one killing anybody, so is it like that Snickers commercial? He's just always hungry? I don't know. As for appearance, well, he kinda looks like the comic, I guess, if he was some sort of weird flower. Oh, and he's got CGI root tentacle things sprouting out his back now. Kinda like Doc Ock, except,
I mean, it's not the worst, but it's higher up on the accuracy scale than Green Goblin.
Remember at the end of Predator when he tosses his mask in the water? He kinda looks like if the nuke's radiation fused his soul with the jungle and he rebuilt himself around the mask. And the tentacles are his dreads.
Despite what his name implies, Man-Thing is no sexual Tyrannosaurus. It'd definitely be a different kind of horror movie. But he does use his Man-Things to do, well, everything else. Tearing people's limbs off, shoving branches up their asses, fusing them to trees. No doubt because it was easier to CG a bunch of roots doing all the work than to have the sorry bastard in the Man-Thing suit actually do shit. I mean, at least Jack Frost moved his arms more. Jack fucking Frost. Anywho, he killed a little under 50 people over the next several months.
Including you-know-who.
Easily his best cameo ever, because he never actually stepped foot on set. Were there that many people just hanging out there? What the fuck was Stan Lee doing in the middle of a swamp? It is the Deep South, I guess. What else he gonna do? Guess that's why the first kill is some dude f***ing in the swamp.
Yeah, I'm sure that's all kinds of sanitary. Don't take notes. Feeling guilty, Renee becomes a hermit and plots Shist's downfall. He steals the oil refinery's dynamite, because they always just have that stuff lying around, and straps them to oil wells, but his plans are always foiled before he can actually blow anything up. And in case you're wondering, Renee and Man-Thing aren't in cahoots to avenge Bywater and their tribe. Man-Thing hunts him down the whole time, which I suppose makes sense since he sold the land in the first place. Thing is, Man-Thing kills the only other living member of the tribe, Pete, who was totally innocent. He prays for peace and Man-Thing offs him on the spot. So with Man-Thing killing an old friend who did nothing wrong and lived in the area anyways, instead of just killing those who threaten his people's land, his MO is...
confusing, lazily written, stupid as hell.
Yeah. No matter, because Man-Thing, eventually, gets his revenge by turning Shist into a human oil pump.
And that's actually kind of badass. Anyway, Renee blows up the oil well, killing himself and bringing peace to the swamp spirit, I think. Man-Thing isn't affected by the explosion, but he sort of breaks down into the swamp afterwards. Is the spirit at peace with one oil well gone? Is Man-Thing dead? I mean, there's plenty more oil wells and the fucking refinery left in town. It's not like destroying one well or even killing the boss is gonna wipe out the industry in a snap. And thanks to the mean green penis pun, literally every member of his tribe that he was supposed to be avenging is fucking worm food now. And beyond that, this sacred Native American spot's on fucking fire and oil spewing out of the ground. Even if this didn't start a wildfire, it's still gonna pollute everything. Bravo, Man-Thing. You've accomplished abso-fucking-lutely nothing. Still, credit where credit's due. This is a better water-based comic movie than Aquacut.
What's that?
My hate mail.
You might have noticed this was shorter than our usual retrospectives. That's because, well, we've been showing the Man-Thing this whole time because we kinda have to, but in the actual movie, we barely ever see him. We see his CGI root things doing stuff a little bit, but Man-Thing himself only shows up in the last 20 minutes. From then on, his time on screen is sporadic at most, and even so, the roots still do all the action while he just stands there. The rest of the movie is just an hour of random, uninteresting people that really have nothing to do with Man-Thing at all. We literally didn't even talk about the main characters. And I promise you, we spent way more time looking at Man-Thing's backstory than the movie ever did. Yeah, it's no wonder this movie has a pretty awful reputation with the meager few who've ever actually seen it, let alone finished it. Let alone have heard of it.
Today's moral: if people burn at your Man-Thing's touch, call a doctor.
We still might get more Man-Thing someday, though. They've been dropping hints throughout the MCU, for example, including Ted Salas's wife being in Iron Man 3 and a statue in Thor Ragnarok. Who knows? With all the multiverse stuff going on now, maybe we'll get a sequel to this and finally get a Howard the Duck crossover.
That'd be cool, I guess. As long as we don't see the duck tits. The way of the future. 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 The way of the future.